Today in this video, we are going to practice our oil pastel techniques. We are going to get acquainted with oil pastels. If you have never used them before, we want to test out their capabilities and what it feels like to handle them. So you're going to need a set of oil pastels, you're going to need this pre-made worksheet, and you're also going to need a pen or a marker, something to write with, so we can label our techniques and some goals in our practice boxes later on. So we are gonna grab a blue. I'm gonna get this darker blue, and we are going to try out different pressures so you can get a sense of what it feels like to handle the oil pastel. It is pretty common to assume that these are crayons because they are shaped similarly. However, you will notice that they feel very different. They're very smooth because they are made with oil. I'm going to treat this like when we've been working with our pencil for shading. I'm going to control my pressure, and I'm going to evenly apply a light layer with this oil pastel. And in contrast, a hard pressure, when you press super hard, you'll feel how it feels more slick. It smooths across the paper. So can do that one really quickly just to feel a difference. These are kind of like paint sticks. So they're really great when you're using color, but instead of crayons, they offer a lot more potential in the textural effects you can get. They layer a lot like when you mix paints or with mark making. So they have a lot of potential to really add visual texture and actual texture to your work. So I encourage you to approach this similar to drawing, but also similar to painting. So it's kind of like an in-between medium. There's lots of debates on if when you're using oil pastel, you're drawing or are you painting? I say approach it like both. Okay, so we can see here with a hard pressure, you build up this oily, super opaque layer. It's really solid. It does not show really any of the paper. I can go back in and fill in some of these white spots. Whereas with a lighter pressure, I could build it up to fill it in, but if you're doing a light pressure, you can get a nice even layer that appears like it's lighter in color and also lighter in value. Okay, staying with the blue that you've chosen, let's not throw oil pastel. Let's make a tint. So to make a tint, when we're using paint, we mix our hue with white. So get your white oil pastel, and you can apply your blue first, and then you're going to directly apply your white as if you were mixing paint. You'd mix up the white with your color. Similarly, you're going to apply your white on top of the blue hue. And you'll notice that as I'm working back and forth with the white, I'm making the blue more and more lighter. This is also a great time to point out that you can see this buildup on my oil pastel. That is quite normal. It's great to have an extra piece of paper near you. I'm just gonna use the back of this scratch piece of paper just to kind of clean off my oil pastel. You could also use a Kleenex and just use the Kleenex to like wipe it off. That works too. I want to show you if you apply white first. So I'm applying a square of white, and then I'm going to use a light pressure and a few marks of blue. And I'm not going to use the blue to blend it in. I'm going to go back to the white, and then I'm gonna blend it in. You can get an even lighter tint of blue. So it does matter which color you put first. It does matter which color you're using to blend them together. Then go ahead and try out another color. I'm gonna clean off this white. I'm going to get this orange. It's like a macaroni orange. So I used a hard pressure on that first orange layer, a hard pressure on this layer of white, blending it together. Now I'm gonna try the reverse. So I just make a square. Did a few diagonal lines, and now I'm gonna take my white and blend that macaroni orange in with this white. Oops, there's a little bit of blue on there. And you can see that I made a totally different tint. It's way lighter because I used white first and just a little bit of this orange, this yellow orange more specifically. And then did another application of white on top. All right, so let's go back to our blue and we're gonna make a shade on this next box. To get our black oil pastel, I'm gonna use a medium pressure for this. And I'm gonna use a medium pressure for the black as well. If I laid down the black oil pastel with a hard pressure, it would be very difficult to blend. Now I'm gonna go back and with a hard pressure blend with this blue. And you'll see that I made a very deep, dark shade of blue. All right, let's pick another color. I'm going to get this green. Gonna use a medium pressure. Use a medium pressure. Go back with the green and blend with a harder pressure. So I'm joining the green and the black together. So the oil pastels are really fantastic for directly blending. So by adding, you can mix those colors. You don't need to do anything special besides just work that area. I could make that darker. I'm gonna demonstrate. I'm gonna go in with a hard pressure on the green. Go a little bit harder pressure with the black. Pretty much covered up the green. But now I can use my green to blend that black into the layer underneath. Now I'm kind of circling the blending together. I'm just gonna keep repeating those marks. All right, I got room for one more. Try to be very careful. The oil pastels are fragile. It is normal for them to crumble. So just make sure you pay attention to like where the crumbs are on your paper so you're not smearing all of your work. And you are applying your oil pastel with control, so it shouldn't just be snapping as soon as you put it down on your paper. Medium pressure with the black, and now I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna just keep repeating this line work movement, kind of like hatching, to blend it together. I could go back. Oh, that's actually pulling it off. I need to caught the paper. right. So those are pretty dark. I want to make sure you can see it. There we go. That looks more purple since I moved the oil pastel box. That shadow was really catching. All right, so they are much darker with the black layer that's added with your oil pastel. Significantly, you can tell that white was added in the oil pastels over here. So now that we've practiced making a tint, making a shade, you can use that later on in our practice. We're going to get our pen and we are going to label Actually, I'm going to clean up those crumbs so they don't scatter everywhere. Checking my hands. All right, we're gonna label these technique boxes. We're going to revisit Scrambling from our practice that we did with our black and white value scales. We're also gonna revisit Stippling. What do you know? And then we are going to make a value scale. So we'll do light to dark on this box. And then I'm gonna wait to label these. Okay, so for Scrambling, whoops, forgot an L. There we go. Okay, for Scrambling, when we were using our pencil or our Sharpie, this is where you are taking your medium, and you are doing those curved, controlled marks and you're layering them. When you do this with an oil pastel, it can be used for your blending. It can also be used to build up a visual texture. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. So I started over here because I am gonna show you if I wanted to switch to a darker shade of blue in my pre-made set. I can kind of just blend them together naturally with this technique. I'm trying to turn my, there we go, oil pastel so you can. So as I'm layering, so you can see, as I'm layering, you can see that this blue is naturally mixing and blending that light blue. And I can kind of go back and blend it even more. But I'm not coloring it in all the way. I still have this circular visual texture. It's providing some visual interest to this box. Kind of looks like swirls of water or something building up. And I'm actually gonna get the white and I'm gonna do the white over here just to add some more interest. So it kind of looks like a gradient. And I'm just repeating these really tight little circles. I'm like making these little C's and curly Q's over and over again. Ooh, there we go. Okay. I'm gonna clean this one off a little bit more. Okay, so similar to Scrambling, Stippling works very similarly. We're just using our dots and repeating them over and over again. However, with an oil pastel, the dots are just gonna break the top surface and just kind of like make it flat. So for this, our stippling, we're just gonna kind of make, instead of just like a dot, because then you just be stamping a flat circle, we can kind of like extend that line. So it's more of the idea of stippling, where we're just making this long like dash. And I'm gonna change up the colors for this one. Let's do green. Okay, so I'm gonna just repeat this mark over and over again. And you might recognize this technique from the painting in our example this week by George Seurat. However, that was an oil painting, so those are more of circles, but you can see in that painting how the layering of the circles and the different colors provides a lovely visual effect, a visual texture. It has value. And then with the layering of different colors, it also is making it pop, because some of the colors that are layered are contrasting, some are harmonizing really well, so it's very, very visually pleasing. I'm gonna switch to this lighter green, and I'm just gonna show you if I add these marks and it naturally blends the darker green. Looks pretty neat. You also, when you're filling this in, you might think of artist Van Gogh, who also used oil paints, but his visual texture created with the oil paints in Pastel is very similar, where he's laying down the brush, making a mark, and then picking it up, and lots of layers of that repeated mark. It looks very similar to the way that we're stippling with our oil pastel. I am going to kind of change it up. I'm gonna do something a little crazy. I'm gonna pick just a random color. I'm really just wanting to pick this because it's just so different than this green. And I'm just gonna layer it in just to show you what it looks like. So pick a random color, go to the opposite side of your stippling area, and make those repeated marks and see when it blends with your color what happens. What does it look like? This kind of looks like a brownish area, even though it's not quite straight brown, but the way that they're mixing, it's pretty fun. All right, and then the last box on this section, we're gonna make a value scale. So we're gonna need to get our white oil pastel on deck. We're gonna need to get our black oil pastel on deck. So I started with my white, added it to the left-hand side. I am actually just going to lightly layer my black. I'm gonna go ahead and establish the darkest dark. And then I'm gonna change my pressure to a little bit lighter. Okay, and then I'm gonna leave it. Now I'm gonna take my white and I'm gonna blend all of that in by just going over it with my white, and it's gonna make a solid gray. I'm gonna need to go back and add some layers with the black to make it transition more. now that that white has been established on top of that layer, it's gonna start looking more like it has different shades of gray, not just all, I need to clean that, not just all straight black or straight white. Oops. Though one of the best things about oil pastel is if you just mess up, you can just keep applying more oil pastel, and most of the time it will change. You can't really erase it, but you can always add marks or add a different color and kind of cover it up or rework an area. Okay, this looks pretty good. That looks good, but I need to make them flow a little bit better. So I'm gonna try to blend out. There we go. I'm gonna use circular marks for this area. Try to add more white. There we go. All right. I'm gonna clean my oil pastels off, so just in the habit of that. And we're gonna get our pen back out. Okay, so on this, we're gonna blend, practice our blending. We're gonna blend warm colors. On this, we're gonna blend cool colors. And on this, it's gonna be like a free space for you, so you could make more tints, make more shades, you could practice and play with your oil pastel pressure and control, you could revisit Scrambling, Stippling, or do another value scale. So this one is gonna be like a free space. Okay, with our warm colors, they are going to be the colors that we think of that have warmer temperatures. So like the sun, chili peppers, lots of reds, yellows, oranges, and then pink would also be considered a warm color too. I was trying to think of something that's technically hot that's with yellow, but when we represent the sun, usually we colored in with yellows. Okay, so I'm gonna go from this red to this orange to this yellow. And I'm gonna start with a light pressure. So this red that I picked up is more of like a red-orange. Now, what I wanna show you is I'm gonna set them up where they look separate. So I've got the red, the yellow, the orange. But I don't want them to stay separate. I want the yellow to kind of go into the orange to kind of go into the red-orange, and vice versa, going the opposite way. So you do want them to start to touch. Not just like where they're a block, but start going into each other. So I'm gonna pull the yellow up into that orange a little bit more. And then I'm gonna go back to this red, or to the orange, and I'm gonna pull the orange up with the light pressure into that red-orange. I'm gonna bring the orange back down into this yellow and blend it down into the yellow a little bit more. And then I have to go back with the red and start at the top. So you're working all the colors that you're blending by layering them. That's the key here. So I did the red. Now I'm gonna go back with the orange. Oops, there's a little bit of blue crumb that got up in there. There we go, and then I need to go back with the yellow. I'm gonna clean it off. Okay, so with the yellow, I'm gonna rework that orange, and now I'm pressing a little bit harder so I can blend that in lot more. And I'm just using circular motions, so that way it kind of looks a little smoother. I could use lines too. You could use that Scrambling. You could be blending with Stippling too. That's a really great way. Those are great ways to blend. I'm gonna go back in with more of a hard pressure for this area that's white. Oops, on this little blue that got in, but all I can do is just keep going on for this example. And this is the red orange. I'm gonna go back in and fill in all of those white spaces. And this area down here is really bugging me, so I'm gonna kind of add some more orange into this yellow. I'm using a light pressure. I just want it to blend a little bit more easily on the eyes. There we go. And you'll kind of notice that, oh, I guess Kirk wants in the studio. You'll kind of notice that oil pastels really do show their texture. That is pretty normal. And it's okay to have that texture show. There are ways to get rid of that texture or to make it look more smooth, but it can't be completely. Okay, so now that we've blended our warm colors, we're gonna grab 3 cool colors and practice blending those. Kirk wants to say hello. Okay, so we're gonna blend our cool colors. So these are colors that are associated with a colder climate or colder temperature. So we think of blues because of water, greens, grass. If it rains, the water makes the grass cool. And then purples. So those colors that sit next to each other on the color wheel are considered the cool colors. They have a cool, calming look to them. So I'm gonna grab, I'm gonna grab a purple. I'm going to pick this blue, and I'm going to pick this green. We're back. Okay, so we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna lay down a light layer with our purple, and then a light layer with our blue, and then a light layer with our green. And then I'm gonna take my purple and I'm going to do a medium pressure, and I'm going to blend, or I'm going to start to blend it into the blue by not stopping just at that blue line, but taking it down into the blue. Go back with my blue, I'm gonna go over that, and then I'm gonna do the same thing, and I'm gonna not stop at the green, but start dragging it down into the green. And then with the green, I'm going to start down here. I'm gonna, well, pick off a Kirk hair apparently, and then go back. I'm going to drag the green up into that area that's mixing with the blue, and you can see that it's already starting to blend. You may have noticed the oil pastels definitely have a texture when you're working with them. Also, they do kind of keep their visual texture on their paper really well. There are some methods for smoothing them out so it looks like it has a little bit more of a flat surface, but one of the characteristics of an oil pastel is that it does provide more of a visual surface texture. Okay, now I'm going back in with a harder pressure to fill this in more solid. I'm gonna start really blending that blue area. I do see this hard line, so when I go back with my blue, I'm gonna try to lightly transition that. And then I'm bringing this down into the green. That you've learned and practiced so many oil pastel techniques, hopefully you feel a little bit more familiar with them. One more area. On this, you get to pick. So this is a free choice area. So pick your own colors, pick your technique that you want to practice, make it fun, make it your own. And I hope that you enjoyed learning more about oil pastels today and how to use them.